So, Lynn, if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to kind of introduce yourself and kind of talk about your interior design business.
Absolutely. Well, thank you first of all, Lisa, for having me here. I think what you do here is really beautiful. Yes, my name is Lynne Niehaus. I am an interior designer. I am also a molecular biologist. I am a mother of two or five, depending on how you count it. I have two of my own, but we are a blended family of seven altogether. Um, I have been in the design industry for about 15 years formally, but I was the kid who I learned to sew how when I was 4. My family, we grew up, my father was a cabinet maker. He had a beautiful, beautiful furniture business, antique reproduction furniture. But he was the man who would go to the ends of the earth to get you what you wanted without. I'm going to mute my notifications here. They're making some noise. But he would spend 11 months working on a piece of furniture and then he'd sell it for peanuts. So uh, I grew up in a very beautiful lifestyle, but we were actually quite poor, to the point where like cars would be repossessed and all kinds of, fun stuff like that. So I learned to make pretty much everything that I ever wanted. So the first design that I ever did was my Barbie dream house. And when all of my other girlfriends had, the big fancy pink plastic Barbie dream houses, I was pulling furniture, I was pulling wood out of my dad's wood scraps and painting them and reupholstering them and making them my own. And as a result, all of my girlfriends wanted to come play Barbies at my house.
Ah,
So I went off to college, studied molecular biology because I decided that I was going to cure birth defects and there would be no more sad babies in the world. And then when I had my own children, because everything that I worked with in the lab was either um, radioactive or carcinogenic in some way, I decided to stay home for the first 5 years and I stepped back into my own creativity. I'm also an artist. I've been painting as long as I can remember, but never very much like my dad. I sold everything for peanuts and finally recognized just through the eyes of my own daughters that what I wanted for them was more than I had ever given myself. So,
And you work with mothers and daughters.
yes, yeah. So after over a decade in the design business, I realized that so many of the women that were coming to me didn't trust themselves and they had lost their own creativity. They thought they made bad or questionable design decisions. And even when they had that intuitive nudge to do something or something they felt right, they went and they pulled everybody in their whole world. And of course, somebody's going to want to give you their own advice. So as a result, I had women over and over coming to me that really had a lot of self-doubt. And when I started looking at the conversations that we subject our daughters to when they're younger and kind of how design has evolved for girls, I could start to see this clear picture of how that strong element of self-doubt had come in because I would go into homes and clients would have me do every single room in their house except for their daughter's room. And they would always say things like, well, she has her own ideas or she wants to do it. And it would always baffle me how someone who would who recognized that they knew what they wanted to accomplish, but didn't know exactly how to do it, would think that a 6-year-old could handle it. And then when their room was always messy, or when their room was, not put together, and the space was poorly utilized, they would blame their daughters. And then it would become this conversation of, well, they're really messy. Or so I finally realized that I wanted to change that conversation, and I wanted to make it easy for these super creative girls to not grow up thinking that their ideas were too big for the budget, or that they were too wild, or they were too crazy, or they didn't go together. And teaching them how to pull things together based on their hearts and their wishes and their activity level. And that's the other thing that I also recognized is, as mothers, our daughters these days are so much more active than we ever were as children. So building that complete room, I mean, their rooms almost have to act like an apartment, because they're holding so many different things. And so creating a nurturing environment that really reflects how unique and awesome they are, and the achievements they have and the dreams they have, was something that I could help them do in a really affordable way, because I was the bootstrapper. And so teaching the girls how to take charge of their space, but then staying in that communication with mom to make sure that everything ties together, and the house feels whole and feels like hers. um it's been just it's just a joy.
Thank you, Lynn. I think it always helps for the guests here to kind of have an understanding of my guest's background. And so I think, and your background is just such an interesting one, and just so, and I love your creative energy and your warmth. And so I was so excited to have you be a part of this, Lynn. And but certainly we're not here to talk about design. We're here to talk about gratitude. And so and I know that that is, just having known Lynn actually for almost a year now.
Yeah, it's coming up on that. That sounds kind of
Coming up
crazy.
on that.
Yeah.
I know that gratitude is a huge part of you, Lynn. And so, but Lynn and I have not had any conversations about it. I know that about Lynn. And so, so I kind of gave her a heads up on some of the things that I might ask. And so what we'll do is we'll just kind of take it from there in terms of that conversation piece. And so kind of my big question, for those who have joined know that I kind of go at the heart of the matter and ask my guests about kind of a time where um, gratitude either helped them kind of work through, kind of get through a difficult time, or help them get to the other side of a difficult time. Because I think that that's sometimes the first place where people begin to kind of tap into the gratitude, or they've lost that gratitude practice or sense of gratitude, and then kind of hit bumpy times and return to that. And so I think, Lynn, if I know you said you can speak to that. So if you have a kind of a story or whatever that you'd like to share in terms of kind of something you went through that kind of led you to kind of a greater awareness practice of gratitude.
I thought that was a great question. And the first things that came up for me were more in like the doing, like how I pulled gratitude into my daily life now. And I
Yeah.
know that's something we want to talk about
Talk about
specifically
it. And if
later.
that,
So, well, so I had to go a little bit deeper, because I wanted to start mentally tracing back, and I already do so much inner child work anyway with like my clients. I thought it was kind of fun for me to do that with myself.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I realized, because I've always had sort of this polarity, when it comes to gratitude, because I think I I tend to be very emotional. So when something comes to me that I don't expect, I'm wildly grateful. Like I literally don't know how to express like the level of gratitude that I have. But then when something comes to me that I'm kind of expecting, I think I struggle a little bit to verbalize my gratitude. So I was trying to figure out where that came from. And I think growing up, there was for me, gratitude was something that was ritualized without having that emotional component, because there was, like grace you said every night at the dinner table, and there was, we were very active members of our church. And so I think growing up, I had more of an association of gratitude with something you were supposed to do and something you were doing in a public way. So I
Mm.
don't think I internalized gratitude until later, when I merged it with this element of universal trust, like trusting the universe would take care of me. And the very first real, I can go back through my history, and I remember these moments of feeling grateful, but I was trying to think of the first moment that I really internalized that. And when my second, when I was pregnant with my second daughter, on the very first ultrasound that they did on her, they thought they found something wrong with her. They thought they found some sort of mass in her brain. And as it turns out, it's something that appears fairly, when I say fairly often, it's not incredibly uncommon. And I guess the person who's our ultrasound technician just wasn't incredibly familiar with this particular phenomenon. And so how she related to my obstetrician was basically my baby had no chance of survival.
Mm.
And that's really the first moment that I had enough faith that I moved into this place of trust, but also 2 weeks later, when we went to a more experienced ultrasound technician who said, "Oh, that's just blah, blah, blah." I don't even remember what it called, because literally every anxiety washed out of my body at that moment. Cause I'd spent 2 weeks, and it's so funny because, in retrospect, that really does seem like the longest 2 weeks of my life. Um, like, like just like just that huge rush of release, i I internalized that. And so I think it's something that now I can go back to, but there was no point in my life prior to that where I made that emotional connection of gratitude to moving forward happily in my life.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I really love that tie to kind of the routines and the practices, and then that emotional piece, because I think, in we've had these conversations about, right, routines and practices, and and we've talked a little bit about kind of that tapping into kind of feeling that gratitude and kind of that heart centered piece of it. Um, but when you kind of add that the emotional piece of it and kind of like I guess because in talking with you I can like you can feel it, you know what I mean? And I think that that's such an important piece is to find the ways to, it's not just the practice of bullet point three things I'm grateful for. It is really kind of tapping in to the emotions and to really experiencing that gratitude.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I love about gratitude is, you could take that first sip of coffee in the morning and just like, oh, this is so good. But it's not until like later in the day when I actually do my gratitude practice when I let my whole body experience that. When I think I am grateful for my husband who gets up every morning and makes me that coffee, no matter what the rest of his day looks like. There's always coffee for me.
I it is it's so interesting because when you were talking about kind of right that physical experience over a cup of coffee, I think just kind of really sinking in to be grateful for those little things, those daily things that are that can nourish you, lift you up. And so, right, the coffee kind of wakes you up, but it's one of those routines of love from your husband. And that, so there's kind of lots of layers to the cup of coffee. And so I imagine in your gratitude, you kind of take that moment to well, I could hear it, right? You
Yeah.
recognize all of the different layers of that piece of gratitude. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so what I'm just laughing at the dog. So
Yep.
Hi Poppy. um so can you talk a little bit about yeah, I know we were going to talk about kind of gratitude practices. Um, but I think you've brought a whole different piece to that in terms of kind of making it experiential. And I know, Lynn, how much you kind of appreciate things like the beauty. You just appreciate the beauty in everything. You know what I mean? And I know I can feel it in conversations with you. And so I think you do appreciate the little things and you have such an observational personality, so I would love to hear about kind of gratitude practices that you have now, maybe some that you worked for you at one time and then didn't, because I think what's really important is that how we practice gratitude changes over time. I know that, what I might have done years ago is not what I do now. And even what I do now is different than probably what I was doing 6 months ago. And when my routine doesn't work for me, I explore to find other ways to kind of make it work. And so I love to hear all kinds of
Okay.
different ideas, Lynn.
Um, so a couple of things there. The first one, I have squirrel brain. So I am thinking about 10 things at once. So I start my day really early. And most of that is because my husband starts his day early. It's just not, and I found that when I got up and started, I was the most productive, like really early in the morning. So by noon, by the time I've had lunch, and especially if I make the mistake of like reading a news story or doing something that kind of pulls me out of what I'm thinking about, post lunch, I really have a hard time getting going again. So, one of the things that I found that really helped ground me and get me back to where I wanted to go, and, what I wanted to accomplish that day, was um, just doing, my three, I just sit down and I take three deep cleansing breaths, and then I write three things that I'm grateful for. And I do try to really feel into who is mowing their grass this time of night. Can you guys hear that?
I don't hear
No,
anything,
Okay,
Lynn.
good. Okay,
no.
No,
I'm
don't
on my
hear it.
podcast mic, so hopefully you can't hear it. But literally, they're
Uh,
right outside the door. It's like
Can't
it's
hear it.
7:30 at night. Who's mowing the grass? Um, so I do. So that's my squirrel brain. You can see it right there.
That's all right.
So, but I found that that was really helpful because I felt completely re-energized and
Yeah.
reconnected to the day, instead of clients and the outside world and what's going on over here. I found gratitude to be very, very grounding, for me, and grounding is something that I need pretty often. um, I do have a really good meditation and journal practice in the morning. I tend to start my meditation practice just by a very quick moment of gratitude.
Mhm.
And I don't, I think, again, until we had this conversation, I don't think I realized how I had put so much around the emotional piece of gratitude that I do experience a lot. Because sometimes I can just be so wildly grateful for a particular color of pink or blue that, like, all of a sudden is in the sky, and it just makes my whole day. Um, versus, like you said, like sitting down and writing, I am grateful that the mail came an hour early, or, those kind of things
Right.
that when you're not having a really good day, you have to hunt, a little bit harder. But yeah, I do tend to be really emotionally grateful in, when I'm outside, when I'm underneath a tree, when I hear, the dove singing, when I'm a big bird watcher. So I'll have a bird that I don't recognize, show up on my windowsill. And
So I have a question for you because right, that's one of the things I feel like that I love to do. You just, right, you look outside at the blue sky and you just kind of take a deep breath and are so grateful for that. Or, those, do you have any kind of, I'm just going to say practice for lack of better word, reaction or kind of way that you do it? Is it like it just bubbles out of you so naturally, which I could totally see? Or is it that you kind of go, oh, look at that, and then kind of do that pause and kind of reflect on it?
it's definitely a full body emotional response. Um,
I think that's what I love about you, Lynn, because it's just like I don't know the answers, but that, right, I guess that's
yeah, because
kind of my sense.
yeah, because it's funny, because like right before we hopped on, I was really kind of thinking in that emotional piece, because I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Like, my mom would always tell me I wasn't grateful. like for certain things. And I think that was where that piece kind of fell in. Like when it's something I expect, that's what I'm like. I hate telling people what I want for my birthday. I hate telling people what I want for Christmas because I feel like if you don't know what to buy me, don't buy me anything. And I'm 100% okay. Like if you're shopping in November or, February and you see something that screams Lynn and you want to buy it. Don't that like I'm not big on holidays. Like I don't care what day anything is, because if I'm out shopping and I see something that screams Lisa, like I'm not gonna think, oh, it's not Christmas, or oh, it's not your birthday. Like I and I don't like, gifts aren't a big thing for me. So if I tell you to buy me something, I expect it, and I open it, I'm like, oh, okay, you bought me what I asked for, great. And I think that came off as very unappreciative, but I was very appreciative. And
Right.
I think just that translation between appreciating and gratitude, where, if you give me something that's, oh, I mean, that's actually one of the reasons I grabbed this mug that I'm drinking out of. It's one of those mugs that change colors when you put
Oh, yes. Yeah.
stuff in it. So when I unwrapped it, you couldn't actually, you could see there was something there that was very faint. And it says, it's from my daughter, and it says, the love between a mother and daughter knows no distance. And it has a picture. She's in North Carolina and I'm in Pennsylvania. And so it has these two little hearts connected. But when I unwrapped it, I was afraid she ordered it wrong, because like you could see there was a design there, but you could hardly see it. So I thanked her, but I'm not also one of those people that like, I'm very honest. So I said, yes, that was very sweet. And then the first time I poured hot water in it and like the message came up, and I was like, of course, I'm like just bleeding tears out of like every part of my body, because it was the sweetest thing I'd ever seen. But for me, it's that kind of experience. So yes, like if I have a ruby crested goldfinch like land on my on my on my deck, I'm going nuts. But I'm also grateful for the robins out there. But it's a different experience. So yeah, so when it's that sort of full body experience, but colors absolutely do that to me.
Right. You are a color, right? Yes.
Yeah.
You love your colors, as do I, but you react to the colors in a very, I mean, that's part of the work that you do. So it's, what I love is the notion of the, hi, Sammy, welcome, is the notion of the gratitude in the middle of the day as a way to kind of get through that afternoon slump. I think that that's a really powerful piece that I have never heard of, Lynn. So many people you talk to do have their gratitude practice in the morning or before they go to bed. And taking that few minutes in the middle of the day to kind of recenter, I think that that's a really neat way of grounding. And I would be curious of how many other people, I wonder how many people out there do it in the middle of the day. My sense is not a lot, but doing it in the middle of the day as a way to recenter is really, I think that that's really powerful, because and especially because you have a journaling practice and meditation in the morning. So you've got an element of that being centered and grounded and a little bit of gratitude tied in there, but kind of in the middle of the day when we all need a little bit of a pickup. Um, that's really a really neat idea. So,
And
uh,
it occurred to me one day because I had this sort of experience of, I'm not here to just get through the day. I'm not on this planet to just make it through the work day.
right.
And so if I truly want to do the work that I feel like I'm here to do, I have to enjoy my day. Like I have to recognize the good parts of it in the midst of it.
In the midst of it. And
As
that's
opposed
so
to,
important.
yeah, as
Yes.
opposed to it not having started yet or at the end of the day. And I did one night also recognize, and this has been wonderfully useful, especially since I used to always joke that I do hot yoga, and me and my other hot yoga girlfriends, like once we were like post 50, somehow we weren't having similar menopausal things that other people did. And I think it's just because we sweat so much in hot yoga, our bodies are like, okay, we're done. Like this isn't happening anymore. So like halfway through yoga, like I started getting, or halfway through COVID, not doing my hot yoga, I started having hot flashes and it was waking me up at night. And I'm a heavy sleeper. And so I'm used to sleeping like all the way through the night and never waking up. So this was a pretty new experience for me. And so the one thing that I found that helped me get back to sleep was instead of counting sheep, I would start counting the things I was grateful for.
Mhm.
And because I have squirrel brain, usually by like number 6 or number 7, like I start drift off onto this tangent and I'm asleep before I know it. And because I think it just floods you instead of like all those little anxious things that you're thinking about, like it puts you in that sort of that back in that taken care of kind of feeling where you feel like, okay, I can sleep now, all's well in the world.
Yeah. Isn't that great? Right, right, right. Because it really, if you can really kind of take that time, it's rather than kind of focusing on body parts and relaxing them as a meditation, um, really kind of think about the day and those pieces, and not even the day, kind of
That,
the
yeah, it
days,
tended
the
to be
weeks,
very
the
kind of
years, the
universal gratitude, like,
exactly, the heat, the running water,
right,
all
right.
of those pieces. So if you can really kind of dive into those things that you're grateful for, it really is going to help to push out those anxious thoughts and the to-do lists and all those thoughts that can kind of come in the middle of the night. I love that, Lynn. That's another great one. And this is what I love is hearing all of the different ways people practice gratitude. So what is this? I think this is my fourth one. And with each one, each each guest brings such different neat ideas, and that's what I love about this. Thank you, Lynn, for your really out of the box ideas. I wanna give people time to either comment on some of the ideas or ask questions of Lynn or myself, just and so that we can keep this to an hour or less. So, so does anybody have any questions that they want to ask, or even any comments on anything? I think that anybody have any thoughts, questions?
I envy the discipline that you and Lynn have with your um, I don't want to say scheduled, but your routine, because it's just part of you from within coming out to do that. I used to be very scheduled, but I don't know if it's because being older and retired, it's kind of like, well, I'll take it as it comes. But so there's a change, but it's working for me because even just out running an errand just now before the meeting, it was a little sprinkly here in Nashua and gray clouds here and little blue, crazy weather, 80 degrees and very humid. And I'm driving on East Dunstable Road and I just happened to look to the left and there is a gorgeous rainbow that just caught my eye. And, and Lynn, you were commenting about how, you just get excited from head to toe, top to bottom. And I go, oh my God, it's a rainbow. And I could see the beginning and I could see where it was coming from. And then a complete huge rainbow. And I had to remind myself, pay attention to the road. This isn't great. But yeah, and I just remember, I went, oh, that is just, oh, thank you. I just love seeing, rainbows. So just like you with your red crested birds, and I love color too. And I think that's, honestly, and it was unexpected.
Right.
So, you touched on that. So I think I've changed over a little bit to unexpected things, colorful things that just, oh God, you feel like you're floating. And I didn't want to stop looking at the rainbow.
Yeah.
It was, and like you say, it was sort of my, that was like 6:45. So it wasn't my midday pick me up, but, it was not planned, spontaneous. And I think I'm just kind of finding more joy in that than and gratitude that I never knew before. Raising kids, you have a schedule, you got to do this, you go to work, okay, laundry, groceries. And I think now that my schedules, my home obligations are quite different. I feel like it's more in the moment, and I'm really enjoying that and feeling better as a result of that. Not that I didn't feel well before,
right?
But it's because it's different.
Yeah. And I think we get so wrapped up in the shoulds, that it's hard to remember that, every day, you can find joy in every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved your description, Patty, of floating, because I think that is what happens is you just kind of feel so lifted up and lighter when you notice the beauty that surrounds you, whether it's a bird, the rainbow, the sky, or even something in the house that just kind of strikes you, a piece of art, the plants, like there's so many different pieces that can just, if you take a moment to pause and just kind of look around you. And I think that's, I know I have worked with people when they're kind of struggling in the middle of the shoulds and the chaos of life around, right, pausing and going, and if I have a bad day, right, like, okay, can I every hour or can I just pause and find something to appreciate? Can I find beauty in the moment? So it might be that I'm in the middle of something that's stressful or frustrating. But so then if I can kind of take a few minutes to go step outside, go look at the flowers, go to the beach, take a deep breath of beach air in, kind of for when we're caught in the fullness of the days and the stress and figuring out how to manage it, or we're just kind of feeling down, to kind of intentionally set those times to notice. Because then I think, if it becomes a practice, you ultimately more naturally do it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. As long as you don't feel like you should. As long as
Yes,
And I think that goes back to the question that you had very, very early on about, how has this moved through moments of my life? I think that's the perfect indication that as soon as you feel like you're supposed to be doing something, even if you've started doing it to make yourself feel better, to, step back into the present moment, as soon as you get into that emotional place of "Ugh, it's 12 o'clock, I need to do my gratitude practice,"
right. The
it's no
pressure
longer
of it, then,
gratitude.
then that's,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it's not.
You've
You're
lost
absolutely right.
that. Yeah. Because I it really is only gratitude when it comes
Mhm.
from that place of lightness, from that place of, present moment awareness.
Thank you, Lynn. Yes. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts that they wanted to ask or share? Anybody?
I just have a reflection.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone. This is so nice. I'm just so happy. It's such a great way to end my day. So thank you. I'm like just smiling over here.
Yeah.
But I really resonate with everyone's examples about nature. And what's coming to my brain is the correlation between gratitude and really being in the present. And I feel like it's kind of interchangeable. Like if you're trying to get to the present, you could either practice gratitude or practice mindfulness techniques. But I feel like those two things intertwine a lot. And I used to practice gratitude like on a piece of paper. It was more of a to-do, but I really just wanted to get my brain doing it every day. And now the gratitude just finds me throughout the day. And it's usually in nature. And I get really emotional, like tears come to my eyes. Lynn, I know you said like you feel it in your whole body. I feel like I just start crying. So yeah, thank you so much.
Tori, thank you. Because I think that that nature piece is really such an important piece, because I think that, it really, when you are in nature, it really has a way of grounding you in a way, and you become aware that the world is so much bigger than just our little world, and there's so much to appreciate in nature. And so I think that, right, going out in nature has a way of stirring that gratitude in a way, the beauty of nature. So
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm waiting for the cool fall days because, well, well, I just take such pleasure and joy in going to different farms and for pumpkins and apples. Uh,
yeah,
Simple. I think I've spent, and now I think of it as maybe wasted, looking for things on a much grander level of some sort. And now I oh, that Drummond farmed on Route 155, maybe. They have a warm, big kettle or hot pot of apple cider, so you can get some warm apple cider. They've got lots of stuff inside, and then you can go pick your pumpkins. They've got the cutout stencils to stick your head through, like with a pumpkin on your head. And it's like, oh, I can't wait. And I agree with everything that Tori said. And in fact, I was told by a friend of mine who's a nurse practitioner, that in the Netherlands, they don't write prescriptions. They'll say what you need is a day in the woods, 5 days a week. What you need is a trip to a mountain or a hike or the water, seek out a nature. You need nature. And that's their prescription. And man, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Could not agree more. I've always said, and I think your mother would remember this too. I've always said a rainy day at the beach is better than a sunny day at home. I will take, you know,
I'll second
me and
that
the,
one.
oh, I know, me and the ocean, you know, we're like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Tori, for your reflection. Because I love that's the beauty of this conversation, is that we are able to kind of come and share even the reflections that just then kind of trigger more thoughts and ideas. And so I am so grateful for you ladies for being here, for participating, and um, and then that we could kind of hold up Kim here.
Yep.
Having a hard day, and I know that this will just hopefully lighten her today as she goes on to the rest of her evening. So I just want to thank everybody for being here, for sharing, for listening. And I know that I will continue to schedule my cup of gratitudes and keep you guys posted.
And thank you, Lisa, for having me. This is the first one that I've actually gotten to come to live. So I usually can catch the replay. So
right.
this was really nice. Thank you for holding this space for all of us.
Oh,
Mhm.
I love doing this. This is, I had thought of doing podcasts and I'm like, no, I need a space. I want connection. So I love doing this. It just kind of lights me up, and I love connecting with my guests, and that has just been so special. And thank you, Lynne, for sharing your heart, for sharing your ideas and your light, because I think you just have a way of lighting up a room. I know anytime we chat, it's always like, oh.
Thank you. That's so sweet. That means so much. Thank you so
And
much.
so certainly in the event, is it in the event? In the event, I think that I have a link to your website. So if anybody's kind of curious about the work that she does, I know I've consulted with her here and there with questions, and she just is delightful and very thoughtful, and so kind of has a lot of neat ideas, and right from one color person to another.
Mhm.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
I do have a podcast. It's called the In Her Eyes podcast. It's available on all the podcast platforms. And it's that merging of interior design and making our spaces a reflection of us, combined with that rediscovery of that creative girl we left behind, and helping our daughters hang on to that so they don't have to do like us and spend, $20,000 on self-help books and programs and rediscovery of our own selves. So, so
Well, thank
thank
you,
you.
Lynne. Thank you.
Okay.
Much appreciated spending this time with you. And and thank you, ladies, for being here, and have a good evening. Take care.
Good night.
Oh, wait, let me stop recording.
Yeah.
Linda, have a good